Nosferatu. It's written and directed by Roger Egers. Of course, it's kind of a knockoff or an homage, rather, to the original Nosferatu that was released in 1922, I believe. I should really look this up. That's so bad. But yeah, we're talking about the 2024. So like 100 years later, 102 years later, Roger Egers takes on Nosferatu. Now, something that's kind of interesting about this vampire movie, and I watched it with a few people that weren't really familiar with Nosferatu. They knew about vampires and, of course, Dracula. And they saw similarities. And that makes sense because the 1922 version was an unauthorized, basically a ripoff of Dracula. And, you know, the big thing they changed was the name of the main character. In Bram Stoker's Dracula, the main character is Count Dracula, the vampire. In Nosferatu, the main vampire character is Count Orlok. So they kind of just changed the names. But something that they also did is they created a different type of vampire. If you look at Count Orlok, he's more of this like monstrous, really disgusting, grotesque, rat-like creature. And rat imagery is a big thing in the new version, where there's just rats everywhere and this sort of plague coming in. And the story follows this Count Orlok who wants to buy a house in this small town of how do I pronounce it? Visburg. But yeah, so let's just go back to that 2 seconds. So Bram Stoker wrote the original Dracula in 1897. So then in 1922, F.W. Murnau changes the name from, and everybody else on his production team, I guess, that's involved in the creation of the Nosferatu tale. They do a silent film, and they change Count Dracula to Count Orlok. Count Dracula is a lot more, I guess, charming, right? He's not always this monster, and Count Orlok is always a monster. Every time you see him, gross, disgusting, rat-like features, claws. He's always in that demon vampire form. Now, probably what I like most about the new version, if I had to maybe give my top 3 greatest hits of the movie, is the performances. The acting is just everybody's top of their game. There's interesting acting, very theatrical feeling. There's it's a period piece, and they play true to that. I think the style of acting really works for that. It feels a lot more like something you might witness on a stage. Stays with the time. The effects are also really interesting and cool because there's this one scene where Orlok is looking out over the city, and you can see this kind of shadow of his hand. And with modern CGI, they could have done anything. They could have had Warlock, flying, twisting, turning, leaping from building to building like a superhero style movie, but they didn't. They just kept with this sort of optical. I'm sure it's done digitally, but it looks just kind of like an optical effect of a shadowy hand that keeps slowly moving over the city as we're kind of droning over top of the town, with Orlok creeping in. He's now come from his castle to to the town where he's getting this old house, and he's going to do his evil upon the town. So there's that. Those two things are really cool. What's kind of interesting for me, because part of me for a while wanted to just recommend, and you should watch Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, because it's also a masterpiece. It's quite a bit older, came out in the 90s, but they take things from the book of Dracula, in my opinion. No, you can't really read the text of Orlok because, again, it was an unauthorized reproduction of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I wonder if the filmmakers went back to the original Dracula when they were thinking about this story and then sort of compared the differences to pay homage to the 1922 short film that Murnau directed, the silent film in 1922. But in particular, the coach that shows up and the wolves and all that kind of imagery as our hero races to Thomas Hunter as the character. He's played by Nicholas Hoult. Is about to meet Orlok for the very first time. So he gets in this coach shows up and there's like nobody inside and the door opens and he gets in, and all that kind of imagery felt a lot like the original, well, I guess it's technically not the original, but the version that Francis Ford Coppola did that I'm so familiar with. So I liked those sorts of things, but I don't know if you're a Dracula fan, if you're a vampire fan, it's another version of that whole world and that story. I don't know how. Yeah, it's quite interesting how a knockoff, an unauthorized copy of Dracula gets made, and then the unauthorized copy is the reference for the remake 102 years later for its release. But, Bill Skarsgård plays Count Orlok. And again, those Skarsgårds, come on, give me a break. These guys are brilliant. How do you get that many, just a family of these awesome actors? His performance. And then Lily Rose Depp plays Ellen Hunter, who is the love interest of Orlok. There's this, I don't know how much spoilers I should give you, but all you probably need to know is that you find out pretty early on that Orlok wants to make her his bride. But the way that whole interaction goes down is so much different than the Dracula love interest story. Do you call it a love interest when a demon's coming for love? I guess it works sort of the same way. But yeah, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but just check that out because there's a really great scene between Orlok and Ellen. Okay. What else can I say about this movie? I don't know. It's not a direct copy of Dracula, but it is definitely an unauthorized reproduction where they are riffing off the beats and a lot of the similar plot to Dracula. But you could also say that in doing that, one thing that they did do is they sort of reinvented the vampire, because this vampire is clearly a different type of thing. I mean, are they both bloodthirsty vampires living in castles? Sure. But there's this different sort of thing going on in the way that they conduct themselves. So here's something kind of trippy that I found out, that Werner Herzog also did a remake in 1978. He did Nosferatu the Vampire. In Herzog's, I'm just looking on IMDb, Count Dracula moves from Transylvania to Wismar, spreading the Black Plague across the land. Only a woman of pure heart can bring an end to his reign of terror. So that's the Herzog version, which is, it has similarities, but it's interesting that they outright called him Count Dracula. So I've never seen that version, but I'm going to check that out. At some point, I want to talk about all three. Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire, Eger's Nosferatu, and Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Okay, well, thanks for listening to me rant about my thoughts and kind of stream of thoughts of Nosferatu 2024. Again, worth checking out. If you're into vampires, I would watch this movie. It's going to give you something different than you've seen before.